Again, welcome to Data Structure and Algorithm Design course. This is CS 435 course. This is our first lectures. And again, we're going to start with Java review since we are going to use Java in this course. So our main objective is to describe objects and classes and also use classes to model objects. We're also going to demonstrate how to define classes and also create objects. Also, how to create objects using constructors. We're going to discuss about two types of constructors. That's the default constructors and also constructors with arguments. Also, we're going to learn how to access an object's data and also method using the object member access operator, which is normally the period. Also, we're going to define the private data fields with appropriate get and set method. Most of the time, when we create a class, we are going to have what we call the get and setters, or getters and setters. Sometimes we use the term set method as mutators. So again, let's start. So here we said object-oriented programming normally involves programming using objects. And we know procedural language normally involve programming using functions, try to identify the tags, and we write the code for the tags or the functions. So an object normally will represent an entity in a real world that can be distinctly identified. So for example, a computer is an object, a car is an object, a student, a desk, a circle. If it's a loan can be an object. So an object has a unique identity, state, and behaviors. So normally every object may have a characteristics and also its behavior. So example for a car, we can say the characteristics can be the color of the car or the wheel drive, whether front wheel or rear wheel drive or four-wheel drive. And also the behavior of a car can be, we can drive it, accelerate or stop it or park it. So every object we can think of. Example for a student, the characteristics of a student can be student last name, first name, grade, and the behavior can be student will take an exams or student go to school or students absent, etc. So that's what we said, that the state of an object will consist of a set of data fields. Also, we call it the properties with their current values. And also the behavior of an object is defined by the set of methods. So this means, again, every class consists of two things: the data fields or the properties, and also the methods, which is the behavior. And this is a very good example. So here we have an example of an object that we want to create, and the object type is a circle. So the first thing we do is to create the circle class. So we have a class name circle. The data field for a circle is radius. We can use radius, or also we can use diameters. And the method can be, we should get the area. If we like, also we can include the setters and the getters method. For example, get radius or set the radius. Get radius will return the value of the radius, and set radius can change or modify the value. So a class normally is a template. A very good example would be in a building industry, and an architectural will first have a blueprint of the building, design the building in a paper or in a computer system. And so that will be the class of the building. Now, looking at the class of the building, which is the blueprint, we can now again construct the real building. So the building itself is an object. So a class again is a template. So also we can use the term a class can be a data type. So again, here we have a class named circle. And as we said, every class consists of two things: the data members or the data fields, and also the methods, which will be the behavior. So we have radius and we have get area. So now we end up creating 3 objects from our class name circle. So our first object name is object 1. So we can see how we define it, or we declare it. We have we say the data type is a circle. The name of the object is object 1. Then we assign the radius to it, which is 10. The second object, the radius is 25, and the third object, the radius is 125. So this is actual object now. So to put it in this way also is that when we create a class, we are just, again, it's more or less like declaration, the template. But the actual object where we have to, again, allocate a memory space to is what we have here, object 1, object 2, object 3. So here we see an object has both the state, as we said earlier, and the behavior. So the state, again, is the data fields of the circle, which is radius. The behavior is only one method, which is get area. And now a class may have as many fields as we want, and also as many methods as we want. So here we say classes are constructs that define objects of the same type. So a Java class uses variables to define data fields and also use method to define the behaviors. So as we see in our previous example, the class name circle, radius is a variable. Get area will be a method. And also additionally, a class also provides a special type of method known as constructors, which are always invoked to construct objects from the class. And we shall see an example soon. So anytime we are creating an object, normally we are going to create the object in the main method. As we all know, Java have a main method, that's where execution takes place. Anytime we create an object, first of all, we have our class template. So when we create the object, again, we have to invoke the constructor. The constructor is, again, a special method that comes with the class. The name of the method constructor is the same as the class name. And also it doesn't expect a returning value, and there's no void. Again, we will discuss detail about it. So this is a very good example of the circle again. So first we use the class diagram. Now we are going to write the code. So again, this code is in Java. So we start with the keyword class. The name of the class is circle. Then we have a comment here that the radius of the circle, which the data type is double, the name of the variable is radius. So normally we use the term instance variable. An instance variable is a variable that belongs to a class or object. So here we initialize it to 1.0. We don't have to initialize it since we have a constructor. Now, if we didn't initialize it and we just say double radius, then this is our constructor. So we can see the constructor name is the same as the class name. It doesn't expect no returning value, and also there's no void. Now, if we invoke this constructor, it's going to initialize the radius to 0 if we didn't initialize it. But here, since we initialize the radius to 1.0, if we invoke the constructor when we create an object, automatically the radius value will be 1.0. Now we have a second constructor also here, but this time this second constructor have an argument. So we call this constructor, some textbook may name it a full constructor or constructor with parameters. Now we are using only one parameter because our instant variable is only one. Sometimes we may have 3 instant variables. We can initialize the first 2. Then the third one will be by default. Or the first can be by default. The remaining 2 will be whatever we have. So here we said the new radius we assign to radius. So when we call this or invoke this constructor, whatever value we have in the parameter will be the value of the radius, because here we can see the parameter name is new radius. Then we assign the new radius to the instance variable, the radius. So anytime we invoke this constructor with parameter, whatever the value of the parameter is, that will be the name of the value of the radius. Then in our circle class, we have only one method, which is get area. So this method will find the area of a circle. And we know the formula for area of a circle will be radius square times the power. So we have radius times the power value. So again, here we have a class named circle. Every class consists of two types of things: the data members and the methods. The data members can be as many as we want, depends on the design of the class. Here we have circle. Circle only have radius. Or we can decide to use diameter, since one of the characteristics of a circle is also a diameter. Then we can have as many methods as we want. Again, this is a very simple example. We can also include at least two methods. Always is very important. By convention, we had the setters and also the getters. That's to set the instant variable. So I may have a method called set radius and get radius. Anytime I call set radius, I can change the value. Anytime I need the value of the radius, I will call the method get radius. And we shall see examples soon. So this is our UML class diagram. We have the name of the class, which is circle. And we have only one instant variable. The type is double and it's radius. That's the name of the instance variable. Or we use the term data fields. Then this time we have more than one method. We have our two constructors, which is, we will call it default constructors. It will initialize it to whatever default value we have for radius. If we didn't initialize radius, then the default value will be 0. Then we have the constructor with a parameter. Then we have the method get area. So this is getters. So this method, when we call it, means we need the value of the area of the circle. So get area means we know the formula to find the area. We have to write the method, the statement for it. Then also we have get parameter. So we should know how to write the code for that. Then we have the set radius. So set radius may set the value or change the value of the radius for us. So we can see the argument is new radius value that we're going to set. And it's not expecting a returning value, so it's void. The same thing we can also, as I said the first time, we can also have a get radius. Get radius will return the value of the radius. So this is our class diagram for our class named circle. From here, we create again 3 objects. This will be in our main method. And again, we will see example of the codes. So let's demonstrate how we can create objects in the main method. And we have the code here. So here, first of all, we know that in every Java program, we always start with our main class. So the class name is test simple circle. So this will be the name of the file also. Then we have our main method. This is where the execution will take place at. So normally the circle class will be outside the main method. We will declare it outside. It can be in the same file, or we can have it in a separate file, but the same directory. So here we just have the main method. So as we said, the main method is where we create our object. This is where the execution takes place. So we can see that here we have our job object name circle1. And also the class name will be simple circle. And here we are calling our default constructor. So the default constructor name is simple circle. So now we have an object named circle1. The object can use all the methods in the class. Here, what we are doing, we say system.out.println. We want to print the message on our screen saying that the area of a circle of a radius is circle.radius, then circle1.getArea. Circle1 is the object. So anytime we are using any data members or any method in the class, we need to start with the object that we are associating it with. So here we create object named circle1. We assign a radius to it by using circle1.radius. Other than that, see here we didn't assign no value to it, which means this is our constructor. It's default constructor. So the actual value, if the radius is 0, then it's 0. But if we look at our design, we say radius is 1. So this means if I call the default constructor, it will give me a radius 1. So now I'm going to use the value of the radius 1 to get the area. And remember, we already implement the method getArea inside the circle class, so we can use it now. As far as we create any object that related to the circle class or simple circle class, we can use its method. So here we say circle1.getArea. So it will be 1 times 1 times 3.142, etc. Now we come back here and we create our second object. This time you can see the second object, the radius is 25, which means we have to call the constructor with parameter. So here we can see our constructor simple circle with a parameter of 25. So we initialize the radius to 25. Then the same thing, we find the area of the circle. This time is circle 2. That's the object name. So we find the area of circle 2. Here we just want to print the radius value on our screen. So this will say the area of the circle of radius 25, because circle 2.radius, the value of radius is 25. But we use the constructor with parameter 25. Then we create the same step again. We create our third object, which is circle 3. We can see constructor with parameter. We initialize the radius to 125. Then we find the area of it, and also we print the statement. Now we can decide to modify the circle radius. So here you can see that we said circle 2 dot, which means circle 2, the actual radius was 25. When we use the constructor, we assign 25 to the radius. But here we are saying that circle 2 dot radius equal to 100, so we are changing the value. Or the best way, if I don't want to use the assignment operator, remember we have the set radius method in the class circle. So we can call that method set radius to 100. And then we can print our result. So again, this is second implementation. This is our class. So as we said earlier, we can see that this is where our main method ends. We close the main method. Then the definition of our simple circle class starts from here. We cannot declare or create a new class in the main method. It will not work. Because in the main method, this is where you create the objects of the class. So by convention, this is the best method to use. Or another option, we can have a different file as far as we said, all the files. For example, I may have a program with 2 classes. I don't want to have all the classes in one file. It's a very big class, a lot of code lines. So I may create a separate file for it, but I have to make sure I save all in one folder in the same directory with the main method also, so that the main method can see them. Or if possible, If we have it in different directory, then we need to import it into the main method. So here our class, since we saw the design, we have only one instant variable, which is the radius. The data type is double. Then we have our methods. We start with the constructor, default constructor. Then we have constructor with parameter. Then we also find the get area. So the formula will be, the area of a circle will be radius times power value, which is math.pi. Again, we are using the math class. pi.math.pi will give you the power value. Then we also find the get parameter. Parameter will be 2 times the radius times math.pi. Then we have a method to set the radius, that's to change the radius value. We can also have a method to get radius, which means we want to know the current value of the radius. So let's do an animation here as we already went through, but we can just go through one more time. So this is our main method. So we say program starts the execution from the main method. Then we create our first object named circle1. And we are using the default constructor. So as we saw it in our main class, the default constructor, the radius is 1. So which means to give us a new circle named circle1, and the radius of that circle is 1. So that's what we have. Radius is 1. Then next, we want to print our statement, the area of the circle of a radius. And the second statement. And so we create second circle. This time the radius is 25. And the same thing, we find the area of it. Then we have our third circle. The radius will be 125. So right now we have our 3 circles. Then from there again, we went through the main class here. So again, this is the simple class. That's the class for the circle. So this is an example again on how to define classes and creating objects. So for example, here we have a class named TV. We have to think of all the possible properties or characteristics of TV. But again, we may have a TV or a person class. The characteristics can be 20, 30. We don't want to write all. We only choose the relevant classes, the classes and properties or characteristics, which is related to our problem we want to solve. So for example, here TV, we say one of the characteristics will be channel and volume level, and whether it's on or off. Well, if we like, we can also have a TV color. We can have the TV weight. We can have the TV height. But maybe all these properties doesn't have much to do with the problem we want to solve by the TV. So those 3 characteristics here, or the data fields, or we use the term data members, are the most important. So in the method section, again, we have our 2 constructor, a default constructor named TV. Then we have a method to turn on and also method to turn off the TV. Then we have a method that can change the channel, set the channel. We also have a method to set the volume. We also have the method to channel up, which is to increase the channel, or channel down to decrease the channel. Same to apply to volume up or volume down. So this again, we can have as many behaviors as we need, but this is what are relevant to the problem we want to solve. So we can see the implementation here. First, let's start with the TV class. So we have the name of the class is TV. It has 3 instant variables, which is channel, we initialize it to 1. Volume level also we initialize it to 1. And we set our on variable to false. Data type is Boolean. So beginning, if we create an object, the on, always the TV will be off first, which is false means off. It's on. So if it's true, that means the TV is on. So here, that's what we are saying. By default, the TV is off anytime we create a TV. So we have our constructor again. We can see the name is TV, same as the class name. This is default constructor. It doesn't expect no returning value. If we call this constructor, the channel by default will be 1. The volume will be 1. The on will be false. Now we have a second constructor, second method here to turn on the TV. So we set the on variable to true. Remember, we have on variable, we initialize it to false, which means TV is off. So if you want to turn on the TV, we have to call a turn on method. If you want to turn it off back, we have a method turn off method. We set the on variable to false. We can also have another constructor whereby we can set the channel to 10 or any value, set the volume to, or we can leave, maybe we want to have another default constructor whereby we are going to set the on to true, but we leave the channel as 1, volume as a 1. We can do that also. So this is our set channel. The channel goes up to 120, so from 1 to 120. So here we use an if statement here that if the on and the new channel is greater than or equal to 1, and also the new channel is less than or equal to 120, then it's good. We set the new channel to the channel. So the channel have to be, and before we set the channel or changing the channel, of course, the TV have to be on. So that's why we say if on and new channel. So if on and new channel greater than or equal to 1 and new channel is less than or equal to 120. So we are using AND operator here. So all the conditions here have to be true. If they are true, then we can set the new channel. We also have set volume, which is the same concept. If we want to set the volume, we have to make sure the TV is on. And the volume have to be between some intervals. So here it's from 1 to 7. Then we can set the channel up. So again, if the TV is on, the channel can go up to less than 120. We increment it. Now down, we can go a negative value. So up to 1, greater than 1, and each runway. So if the channel is greater than 1, then we can decrease it. If it's 0, we cannot decrease it because we can't go negative. Same thing apply here. We don't want to go more than 120. So if we reach 120, we cannot increment no more, because beginning we said the channel is from 1 to 120. So if we are channel up, we should be careful. First, the TV should be on. The channel should be less than 120, then we can increment it. If we want to go down, the TV should be on, but the channel should be greater than 1 because we start from 0. If it's 0, we cannot decrement. Same thing applies to the volume, as we said. The volume is between 1 to 7. So if the TV is on and the volume is less than 7, then we can increase the volume or increment it. Now the volume shouldn't go less than 0. So if the TV is on and the volume is greater than 1, then we can decrement it. So again, this is our method. This is our class for TV. Now we need the main method. And this is where we are going to create our object. So again, our main class name is, in the main method that's where we have the main class. So this is the name of the file again. So we have the main method. We create a new object for TV and it's called TV1. And these are the few things we want to do. First, we want to turn on the TV. After we turn it on, we want to set the channel to 30. Then also we want to set the volume to 3. We have all these 3 methods in the TV class. So we can use it. As far as the class is TV, every instant variables and the method inside the TV class, we can use it. Then we create a second TV, object named TV2. We turn it on, and this time we increase the channel. If the channel is 120, we cannot increase it no more. And also, we do the same thing more, so we increase the channel twice. Then the volume, we increase it once. Volume up means increase. Then we print the outcome of the 2 objects. So here we say the TV channel is whatever the TV channel is. That's TV1, the first object. The second also the same TV2, the second object. We want to know the channel and we want to know the volume, that is the volume level. So that's a good example. The whole concept of object-oriented is what we have gone through so far. Now, our next lectures, we're going to discuss about inheritance and polymorphism. So now let's go detail about what we have covered so far. So we talk about constructors, very important. This is a default constructor. So whatever instant variable values they have is what we are going to use. If the instant variables don't have no value, then we are going to initialize everything to null or 0. If it's a string, it will be null. If it's values, it will be 0. We have a second constructor with parameter. So it depends on the argument. When we create the objects in the main method, whatever argument we give for the new radius, that will be, again, this is the circle class. So new radius, that will be the radius for that object. So we say that a constructor with no parameters is referred to as no argument constructor, which sometimes we also call default constructor because it uses the default values. Now, constructors must have the same name as the class itself, which we said. Also, constructors do not have a returning type, not even void. And also, constructors are invoked using the new operator when the object is created in the main method, and we saw this example. So for example, I have a class name circle. I'm creating a new object named circle1. And the constructor name also, of course, will be circle. So I will send circle class 1 equal to new. And the keyword new. So constructors are invoked using the new operator. Then new, then the constructor name, which is circle, then we say 20 if constructor with the argument of the radius. So constructors play a very important role. Always when we are creating an object, we have to automatically invoke the constructor. So here, for example, the new class name. So that's the constructor new circle, default constructor, or new circle constructor with parameter. So we say default constructor, as we said many times already, a class may be defined without constructors. Then automatically the default constructor will be called. So in this case, a no argument constructor with an empty body is implicitly defined in the class. So even if you create an object, or here we say class may be defined without constructors. So I create a constructor. I didn't create no constructor in a circle class or in a class. By default, the default constructor, because when we create the object, we're still going to invoke the constructor since it's the same name as the class. but with no argument. So whatever values for the instant variable, that's what we are going to use. So that's why normally we say constructors with no argument is also called default constructors. Because if we don't even have a constructor, no constructor in the circle class or any class, by default, the no argument constructor will be invoked to create the object. So that's what we said. This constructor called a default constructor is provided automatically only if no constructors are explicitly defined in the class. So declaring object reference variables, we say to reference an object, we always assign the object to a reference variable. To reference an object, assign the object to a reference variable. Now, to declare a reference variable, we should use the following syntax, which we just use. The only thing we can write is 2 in 1. So for example, class name, the object reference variable. So we create our circle, my circle, but we wrote everything one line. So we say circle, my circle equal to new, then we invoke the constructor. But we can write circle, my circle. Then the next line, we are going to invoke the constructor, which is right here. So circle, my circle equal to new, then create an object. Invoking a constructor, this is where we create the object. So now accessing object members, we use the period. So, and we saw the example in our program. For example, if I want to get access to the radius of the circle object that I create, I'll say my circle. So my circle now is an object, it's not a class. So my circle dot radius, that will give me the radius of my circle object. This is referencing the object data. Now, if you want to invoke the object method, the object method is all the method that is in this class. So if I have a class with 10 objects, if I have a class with 10 methods, the object can use all the methods. So for example, we have a method named getArea in a circle class. So I have an object named my circle, which we created using the circle class. So whatever circle class have all the method data members, I can use them. So here we say my circle dot getArea, because getArea is a method in the class named circle. And we use the class name circle to create our object named my circle. So my circle can use getArea method. So that's the trace code here. So we have circle, my circle equal to new circle 5.0. This means we are creating a circle with a radius of 5. And the same thing, we have second one, circle, your circle equal to new circle. So here, by default, the radius is 1. So we're going to create. Later, we can assign 100 to our new object we create called your circle. It was 1 since we called the default or no argument constructor. But we can set it to any value we want to. So here we have our first circle. The radius is 5.0. This 5.0 will reference value because we use the assignment. Then we create, so that's our first object, my circle is 5.0. Now your circle, the first part, there's no any value, so your circle, no value. But the second part will give me the value of 1.0 because the constructor default radius is 1.0. But now we have another method to change it to 100. So we call the object, your circle, with the period radius, set it to 100. Or if we have the method which we have in our class, set radius. So I can just write your circle dot set radius. Then the argument set radius method takes an argument. So the argument I'll write 100, which means I'm setting the radius to 100. So here they say we should record that we use the math.method name argument, example, math.pow 3 and 25, which means the 3 will be our base, 2.5 will be our exponent. This is calling the power method. Now, you can see that here we have math is a class. POW is a method. We don't need an object here. We don't need to create an object for math class. Then we use that object. And the reason why, because again, Java library files or the classes, they are called static class. Static class means, again, we don't need a method to use. I mean, we don't need an object to use the method. So here we say to invoke a method in a math class. Can you invoke get area using simple circle.getArea? No. Simple circle is a class. We need to associate getArea with an object. So I have to create an object from simple circle, then I can use it. So simple circle class again cannot be associated with a method. We have to create object first. So the answer is no. All the methods used before this lecture are static methods, which are defined using static keyword. However, getArea is not static, so it must be invoked from an object. So again, the data fields can be of a reference type. For example, the following, we have a student class, and class name, again, student. We can see student have a data name, age, a science major, and gender. We can see that all the 4 data members are different types. It's perfect. We will discuss something about one of the advantages of object-oriented programming is what we call the encapsulation. Encapsulation method associated with security, which means we create a class named student. We have 4 different variables, or I would say data fields or data members with even different data types. And also we may have methods, but all together it's like one unit, a bundle of different data associated with only one class. So here again contain data field name of string type. And we also have a new value. Normally, if a data field of a reference type does not reference any object, then that data field holds a special literary value no. And we shall see a very good example about that. So first, in our main method, we have a student class already, our previous slide. We create a student object named student. We can assign the student name, age, the science major, and gender. Here we are using the period sign to access the default values. We are not using any method to assign the values. So whatever the name is, the age, if the name, there's no any value, which means student, we can see that the student constructor is a constructor with no argument. So name will be null, there's nothing in. Age is int, so it will be 0, etc. So Java assigns no default value to local variable inside the method also. So here we have a main method. We have a variable x. S has no default value. We have string y. Y also has no default value. Now, if we want to print out the s and y value, we are going to get an error. Some previous program like C++, we know normally when we declare a variable, the operating system will randomly allocate in the memory space. So whatever memory space that operating system allocate to us, the content there will be printed, which sometimes we call the trash, because It's not there, it's there a long time. But with that's C++. But with Java, because of garbage collector, if we are not using any variable, it's not pointing to anything. The content again will not. So what we're trying to say very straightforward is that if I write this program, because we didn't initialize X and Y values, I will get a compiler error, variable not initialized. So if I want to print any items, content in a variable, we need to have a value to initialize it. So this example, like primitive type, we declare variable, we assign one to it, then one will go to that very location. But if it's object type, the C will be the address. The content of the location will be the address where the actual object content is located. So here, the operating system allocate this area for us to store the circle radius 1. So the address there will be stored. So if we are using assignment operator for primitive, like I equal to J, it's okay. I, different memory location. But if for object type, you use the equal sign or assignment operator, what will happen is that it's just going to change. The data will still be there, but the arrow, the pointing to the address may change. So for example, here we say C1 equal to C2. First, C1 is point to different location, C2 also different location. But now see C1, C2, what have the pointer changes. So C2 pointer also start to point to same location with the previous. So C1 will be gone because we assign C2 to C1. So now C1 also is pointing to the same location with C2. Then Java garbage collection, and then we'll take this out. This will be null. And that's lead us to garbage collection. As shown in the previous figure, after the assignment statement C1 equal to C2, C1 now point to the same object referenced by C2. So the object previously referenced by C1 is no longer referenced. So this object is known as garbage. And garbage is automatically collected by Java Virtual Machine. So one TPS said, if you know that an object is no longer needed, you have an option. You can explicitly assign null to the reference variable for the object. Or the Java Virtual Machine will automatically collect the space if the object is not referenced by any variable. So that will be our conclusion of our first lectures in Java review, which again, we go straight to Java object-oriented programming concept. So I will see you in the second lectures and wish you the best. Thank you.